What if I told you that Nissan built a car so extreme, so purpose-built for one specific goal, that it fundamentally broke the rulebook of endurance racing? Not metaphorically, literally. The governing bodies had to rewrite their regulations because of what Nissan did with the R390 GT1. This isn't just another story about a fast car that got banned. This is about how Japanese engineers exploited every single loophole in the FIA GT1 regulations, created a monster that was technically legal but philosophically illegal, and forced the entire sport to change forever. Picture this. It's 1997, and you're standing in the Nissan Motorsport facility in Atsugi, Japan. In front of you sits something that looks like it escaped from a video game. The bodywork is so low, you could practically step over it. The cockpit is so cramped that drivers need help getting in and out. The engine bay holds a twin-turbo V8 that sounds like controlled chaos. This is the R390 GT1, and it's about to expose the biggest contradiction in motorsport regulations. The R390 wasn't just fast, it was a $2 million middle finger to the entire concept of production-based racing cars. Nissan built exactly one road car to satisfy homologation requirements. 1. They parked it in their Zama warehouse, took the required photos, filed the paperwork, and then built race cars that shared almost nothing with it except a vague silhouette. The road car had air conditioning and leather seats. The race car had a fuel cell where the passenger seat should be, and cooling ducts that could swallow a basketball. But to understand why the R390 caused such controversy, we need to travel back to 1993. The FIA had just created the GT1 category, trying to revive the glory days of sports car racing. The idea was simple. Manufacturers would build exotic supercars for the road, then race modified versions at Le Mans. Customers could buy something similar to what they saw winning on Sunday. McLaren had shown the way with the F1. Mercedes followed with the CLK GTR. Ferrari was developing the F50 GT. The future looked bright for gentlemen racers with seven-figure bank accounts. Here's where it gets interesting. The rules required manufacturers to build at least one road-legal version for homologation. Not 25 like Group B, not 200 like Group A. 1. The FIA thought manufacturers would naturally build more to recoup development costs. They thought wrong. Nissan saw that single car requirement and thought, why waste money building road cars when we can spend it all on the race car? The regulations stated that GT1 cars must be based on road cars with certain specifications. Maximum engine displacement of 6 liters naturally aspirated or 4 liters turbocharged. Minimum weight of 1,100 kilograms for the race version. The road car needed functioning lights, indicators, a horn, and theoretically be usable on public roads. Nissan's interpretation of theoretically usable would become legendary. Their engineers started with the VRH35L engine, a 3.5-liter twin-turbo V8 derived from their IMSA GTP program. In race trim, with boost turned up to 2.8 bar, it produced 641 horsepower at 6,800 RPM and 637 lb-ft of torque at 4,400 RPM. The road car, running just 1 bar of boost to meet emissions requirements, made 550 horsepower. Still respectable, but the race engine was the real focus. The chassis was a carbon fiber monocoque weighing just 95 kilograms. For perspective, that's lighter than most motorcycles. The suspension used double wishbones all around with pushrod actuated dampers, exactly like a Formula One car. The 6-speed sequential gearbox came straight from Nissan's Group C program. Ground clearance was 80 mm at the front, 100 mm at the rear. The road car supposedly had 120 mm, though nobody ever really checked because nobody ever drove it. TWR, Tom Walkinshaw Racing, handled development and construction. These were the same people who dominated Group C with Jaguar, who knew every trick in the book. They took Nissan's concept and weaponized it. The aerodynamics package generated 2,300 pounds of downforce at 200 mph. The drag coefficient was 0.38, remarkable for something making that much downforce. The front splitter extended so far forward that crew members had to be careful not to trip over it in the pits. Now here's the part that really upset the establishment. Mercedes-Benz had spent $40 million developing the CLK GTR. They built 25 road cars, each selling for $1.5 million. Porsche was preparing the 911 GT1 with similar investment levels. McLaren had sold the F1 to customers for years before going racing. These companies played by the spirit of the rules, building genuine road cars that happened to race. Nissan? They spent an estimated $8 million total, one road car that never turned a wheel in anger. The race cars that looked similar, but shared almost no components. The rear wing on the race car was hydraulically adjustable. Banned on the road car. The race car had a flat floor with full-length Venturi tunnels. The road car had exhaust pipes running underneath. The race car ran on slick tires with a sophisticated tire pressure monitoring system. The road car had street tires that would melt after 5 laps at race pace. The most audacious part was the weight distribution. The race car achieved a perfect 50-50 balance with driver and fuel load. The road car, with its heavy emissions equipment and sound deadening, was 52-48 front biased. Nissan claimed they were the same car. The FIA scrutineers looked at the paperwork, looked at the single road car sitting in Japan, shrugged, and stamped approved. At the 1997 Le Mans test day, the R390 shocked everyone. It lapped in 3 minutes 43 seconds, just 2 seconds off the outright track record. This was its first public appearance. The established team started asking uncomfortable questions. How could Nissan develop something this fast so quickly? Why did their road car never appear at any motor shows? How many were they actually planning to build? The answer to that last question was one. They built one road car, eventually, after using the race cars for the entire 1997 season. The road car was completed in 1998, after the race program had ended. It featured Connolly leather, air conditioning, a luggage compartment that could fit exactly one briefcase, and a price tag that was never officially announced because it was never actually for sale. Nissan registered it, got the paperwork stamped, and rolled it into storage. Mission accomplished. During the 1997 Le Mans 24 Hours, the R390s qualified 3rd, 4th, and 12th. Not bad for a debut. The race itself exposed both strengths and weaknesses. The aerodynamics worked brilliantly, the cars were stable at high speed, and the engines were bulletproof. But the gearboxes, those sequential units from the Group C era, weren't designed for 24-hour races. All 3 cars retired with transmission failures. The number 21 car, driven by Aguri Suzuki, Kazuyoshi Hoshino, and Masahiko Kageyama, lasted the longest, completing 238 laps before retiring in the 16th hour. The failure stung, but Nissan learned valuable lessons. For 1998, they developed the R390 GT1 Evolution. New aerodynamics reduced drag while maintaining downforce. The engine now produced 650 horsepower with improved fuel efficiency. The problematic sequential gearbox was replaced with a traditional H-pattern unit, sacrificing shift speed for reliability. Weight dropped to 1,040 kilograms, the absolute minimum allowed. But by 1998, the game had changed. Toyota arrived with the GT1, a car that made the R390 look conservative. Mercedes brought the CLR, an evolution of the CLK GTR that was basically a prototype with license plates. Porsche's 911 GT198 shared nothing with a road-going 911 except the headlights. The GT1 category had become a joke. These weren't grand tourers. They were Le Mans prototypes wearing unconvincing disguises. The 1998 Le Mans race proved the point. The R390s qualified 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 10th. Respectable, but not spectacular. In the race, they showed improved reliability. The number 32 car, driven by Jan Lammers, Anders Olofsson, and Keiichi Tsuchiya, finished 3rd overall, Nissan's best Le Mans result in the modern era. The other three cars finished 4th, 5th, and 6th, an impressive showing, but Toyota's GT1 had been faster before retiring. Mercedes dominated before their famous aerodynamic accidents. The prototype pretenders had taken over. The FIA watched this escalation with growing alarm. The GT1 rules were supposed to create spectacular road cars that raced. Instead, manufacturers built pure race cars and fulfilled the road car requirement through creative paperwork. The R390 was patient zero of this infection. Nissan had shown everyone else how to exploit the single-car loophole. If you only need to build one road car, why compromise the race car at all? The technical innovations of the R390 deserve detailed examination. The VRH35L engine used twin Garrett T25 turbochargers with ball bearings, cutting spool-up time by 50% compared to conventional journal bearings. The intercoolers were water-to-air units integrated into the side pods, saving weight and improving packaging. The engine management system, a Motec M48, could adjust boost pressure, ignition timing, and fuel mixture on the fly based on gear position, throttle input, and lateral G-forces. The suspension geometry was revolutionary for a GT car. The front track was 1,650 millimeters, the rear 1,620 millimeters, creating slight understeer tendency that drivers could override with throttle input. Spring rates were 650 pounds per inch front, 850 rear. The pushrod suspension allowed for easy adjustment of ride height, roll stiffness, and damper settings without removing wheels. During pit stops, mechanics could adjust the handling balance in seconds. The carbon fiber monocoque used a honeycomb aluminum core, providing incredible stiffness at minimal weight. Torsional rigidity exceeded $25,000 netter per degree, comparable to contemporary Formula One cars. The fuel cell held 90 liters and was positioned directly behind the driver, optimizing weight distribution as fuel burned off. The cooling system circulated 12 liters of coolant through radiators that could dissipate 180 kilowatts of heat. But the aerodynamics were the real masterpiece. The front splitter generated 380 pounds of downforce on its own. The rear diffuser, starting ahead of the rear axle, created a low-pressure zone that sucked the car onto the track. The rear wing was a three-element design with the top element hydraulically adjustable. On the Mulsanne straight, it would flatten to reduce drag, allowing a top speed of 354 km/h. Through the Porsche curves, it would deploy fully, generating enough downforce that drivers pulled 3.2 lateral Gs. The brake system was equally impressive. Carbon discs measured 370 mm front, 355 mm rear. They could operate at temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius without fade. The brake balance was driver adjustable via a cockpit lever, allowing fine-tuning for different fuel loads and tire conditions. During qualifying, drivers could brake as late as 75 meters before the first chicane from 350 km/h. The data acquisition system logged 128 channels at 100 Hz, recording everything from suspension travel to exhaust gas temperatures. Engineers could overlay data from different drivers, identifying where time was gained or lost. The telemetry system transmitted live data to the pits, allowing real-time strategy adjustments. This level of sophistication was unprecedented in GT racing, borrowed directly from Formula One. Now let's talk about why this all mattered. The R390 didn't just bend the rules. It exposed the fundamental flaw in the GT1 concept. How do you create rules for road-based race cars when manufacturers will always prioritize racing over road usability? How do you enforce the spirit of regulations when the letter allows such obvious exploitation? The Mercedes CLK GTR road car was barely usable on public roads, but at least Mercedes built 25 of them and sold them to collectors. The McLaren F1 was a genuine road car that went racing. Even Porsche's 911 GT1, despite sharing little with a regular 911, was engineered as a functional road car first. The R390 road car was an afterthought, a box-ticking exercise completed after the racing program ended. The controversy intensified when details emerged about the road car's development timeline. Internal Nissan documents leaked years later showed the road car wasn't even started until September 1997, 3 months after the Le Mans race. The chassis number of the sole road car was R390-01, suggesting it was the first built, except the race cars carried numbers R390-02 through R390-05. How could the prototype come after the production versions? The answer was creative paperwork. Nissan argued the design was finalized before race car construction began, making the road car technically the original, even if built later. The FIA, already embarrassed by the GT1 situation, accepted this explanation to avoid admitting they'd been fooled. But privately, officials knew they'd been played. The financial implications were staggering. Traditional manufacturers spent fortunes developing road and race cars simultaneously. Nissan spent a fraction of that by ignoring the road car until absolutely necessary. They proved you could compete at the highest level of sports car racing for the price of a single Formula One car development program. This efficiency came at a cost. The death of GT1. By late 1998, the FIA had seen enough. The GT1 category was terminated. New prototype regulations were introduced that dropped any pretense of road relevance. The manufacturers had killed the category by exploiting it too aggressively, and Nissan's R390 was the prime example everyone pointed to. One road car that was never driven, built after the race cars. It made a mockery of the entire concept. The R390's legacy is complicated. On one hand, it represented everything wrong with late 90s sports car racing. Manufacturers exploiting loopholes, building missiles with token nods to road legality, prioritizing lap times over sporting integrity. On the other hand, it was a brilliant piece of engineering that showed how creative thinking could overcome larger budgets and established competitors. The technical innovations pioneered on the R390 influenced Nissan's future projects. The hydraulically adjustable rear wing appeared on the R34 GT-R. The ball-bearing turbos became standard on high-performance Nissans. The data logging systems informed development of the Atisa ETS all-wheel drive system. Even the carbon fiber construction techniques were refined for the later R35 GT-R Nismo editions. For the drivers, the R390 was a revelation and a challenge. Aguri Suzuki described it as the most demanding car I ever drove, but also the most rewarding when you got it right. The narrow cockpit meant drivers couldn't move their arms freely. The pedal box was offset to the center, requiring an unusual driving position. Forward visibility was limited by the low roofline and narrow windshield. The sequential gearbox in the 1997 cars required perfect rev matching or it would destroy itself. The heat management was brutal. Cockpit temperatures exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. Drivers lost up to 4 kilograms during a stint. The carbon fiber monocoque transmitted every vibration directly to the driver. After 2 hours at racing speed, drivers emerged with bruised ribs and numb hands. The physical demands were so extreme that Nissan implemented a mandatory fitness program for all drivers. Yet when everything worked, the R390 was magical. The aerodynamic balance was so refined that drivers could place the car within centimeters, lap after lap. The twin-turbo V8 delivered power in a controllable surge that made corner exits an exercise in precision throttle control. The carbon brakes allowed impossibly late braking points. At the limit, the R390 danced on the edge of adhesion with a predictability that inspired confidence. The sole R390 road car still exists, stored in Nissan's Zama Heritage Collection. It has covered less than 50 kilometers total, mostly moving between storage locations. The interior shows zero wear. The engine has never been rebuilt because it's barely been run. It stands as a monument to creative rule interpretation, a reminder of when manufacturers pushed so hard they broke the entire system. The race cars faced different fates. Chassis 02 was converted to 1998 Evolution specification and retired to Nissan's collection. Chassis 03 was sold to a private collector and occasionally appears at historic racing events. Chassis 04 and 05 were stripped for parts, their carbon tubs supposedly destroyed, but rumors persist of one surviving in a private Japanese collection. The 1998 cars were all retained by Nissan initially, though at least two have since been sold to collectors. The financial audit of the R390 program, conducted years later, revealed the true genius of Nissan's approach. Total development cost, $8.2 million. Cost per race car, approximately $1.5 million. The Mercedes CLK GTR program, by comparison, cost $40 million just for development, with each race car costing over $3 million. Nissan achieved 90% of Mercedes' performance for 20% of the cost. In motorsport terms, that's unprecedented efficiency, but efficiency wasn't the goal. Winning was. And while the R390 never won Le Mans, it achieved something arguably more significant. It exposed the GT1 regulations as fundamentally flawed, forced a complete restructuring of sports car racing, and proved that creative engineering could overcome traditional approaches. It was a technical success that became a political disaster. The modern parallels are striking. Today's hypercar regulations try to balance manufacturer freedom with cost control, learning from GT1's mistakes. The success of cars like the Toyota GR010 and Ferrari 499p shows that manufacturers still want to race at the highest level. But nobody tries the single road car trick anymore. The R390 poisoned that well forever. Looking back, the R390 represented peak 1990s motorsport excess. Massive budgets, minimal oversight, and manufacturers pushing boundaries until they broke. It was unsustainable. Everyone knew it, but nobody wanted to stop first. The R390 wasn't the most excessive GT1 car. That honor goes to the Toyota GT1 or Mercedes CLR. But it was the first to show how broken the formula was. The engineering legacy lives on in unexpected places. The aerodynamic principles pioneered on the R390 influenced the design of the Nissan GTR LM Nismo, the front-wheel drive Le Mans prototype that failed spectacularly in 2015. The data systems developed for the R390 evolved into the sophisticated telemetry used in Super GT today. Even the marketing approach, building minimal road cars to satisfy regulations, inspired other manufacturers in different categories. For Nissan, the R390 was both triumph and cautionary tale. It proved they could compete with anyone in sports car racing. It demonstrated their engineering capabilities on the world stage. But it also showed the dangers of being too clever, of exploiting rules so aggressively that regulators have no choice but to respond. The R390 won battles but lost the war, contributing to the death of the very category it was built to compete in. The human cost shouldn't be ignored. 3 test drivers were injured during R390 development. 2 mechanics were hospitalized with heat exhaustion during the 1997 Le Mans race. The pressure to succeed with such a radical concept created a toxic environment in the team, with key personnel leaving after 1998. The pursuit of performance had real consequences, beyond lap times and trophies. So what's the verdict on the R390? Engineering masterpiece or regulatory disaster? Both. It was a brilliant response to a flawed rulebook, a car that did exactly what was asked while violating the spirit entirely. It was too successful at exploiting loopholes, too obvious in its circumvention of intent. The R390 didn't break any rules, but it broke the entire category. The lesson is clear. In motorsport, being technically correct isn't always enough. The R390 was legally a GT1 car, but philosophically it was a prototype, wearing a disguise so thin it fooled nobody. When regulations rely on manufacturer good faith and manufacturers respond with creative interpretations that mock that faith, everybody loses. The fans lost GT1 racing, the manufacturers lost a marketing platform, the sport lost credibility. Today, when you see a modern hypercar racing at Le Mans, remember the R390. Remember how one car company's creative interpretation of build one road car led to an entire category's demise. Remember that in racing, as in life, just because you can doesn't mean you should. The R390 could exploit every loophole, and did. The result? The loopholes were closed, the category was killed, and a brilliant piece of engineering became a cautionary tale about pushing too hard. The R390 remains one of the most technically impressive cars ever built for Le Mans. Its influence on racing technology and regulations cannot be overstated, but it also stands as proof that winning at any cost sometimes means everyone loses. Nissan built a car so good at exploiting rules that the rules had to be thrown away entirely. That's not a victory. That's a Pyrrhic triumph that echoes through motorsport history as a warning. Break the spirit of the rules, and the rules will break you back. What do you think? Was Nissan wrong to exploit the single-car loophole so aggressively? Or were they just playing the game better than everyone else? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of racing's most controversial cars, hit that subscribe button for more stories of engineering brilliance and regulatory disasters. Until next time, keep questioning the rules, but maybe don't break them quite as creatively as Nissan did with the R390.